And it's your responsibility to find your style as well. Don't just wait for it to come to you. You have to recognize all the elements that go into you making your work and nurture them and encourage them. Don't ignore them, and you'll get to where you need to be quicker.
Hello everyone, this is Chris and Adrian for 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐵, the way of the artist. This is our 5th episode. We welcome you all. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about becoming a freelancer. We've got a couple of questions on the last episode about our starting points, how we got into this business. So we're gonna dive into that.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this one. And thank you to everyone who's listened to the past 4 podcasts. If you've managed to listen to more than one, we do appreciate it. And any feedback we've had, we're really grateful for. Obviously, something as brand new as this needs a little help getting that early momentum. So, we're really grateful. And thank you for listening again.
Yeah, I can only second that. And reaction's been quite positive so far. We've only released the first 2 at this point. And reactions have been really good. And even though the numbers are obviously still quite small, which is to be expected, of course, because this stuff always takes a lot of time nowadays to grow. But be sure we are always appreciative of every listener, and we hope you enjoyed it so far, and you will enjoy it in the future as well.
Indeed. So before we get into the main subject, I'm interested to hear your experience with taking Schammasch to Inferno Festival. I'm always interested in the details of what goes into something like this from a band point of view. And I know we were speaking like a couple of days beforehand while you were getting a lot of the flight logistics in line and things. Yeah. And obviously only share what you feel like you'd want to.
Sure.
I feel like myself and listeners could probably, gain some insight into what goes into it and hopefully make people kind of, I won't say appreciate live shows a little bit more, but I feel like there's definitely room for kind of like learning about what goes into something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to talk about it, to talk about some of the aspects at least. It's been quite stressful, to be honest, because there was some troubles with the flight schedules being changed quite close to the flights. So it was a huge stress in the end. We were there less than 24 hours, and for me, it's always a pain in the ass to play shows like that, especially when it comes to flying shows. When you only have less than a day and you have to travel at the same day when you play the show, because travel to me is always, it's really tiring, it's really exhausting. And playing a show after that, after a day of travel, especially flying with all the airport stuff and everything, it's hugely draining for me. So it's not been the optimum, but the show was still great, even though we had some fuck-ups with the technical stuff as well. Stage was very, very packed with behemoth stuff, so we had a bit of trouble to find good positions. But all in all, even though there were some technical issues and all the stress and everything, the show was great and people loved it, and that's in the end the whole thing that matters.
Good.
But I could do with less stress, of course, and I'm always glad if shows turn out to be more of a relaxed experience for me. Sometimes you just can't avoid it, and you have to, just take it. But Yeah,
I guess.
it's been great, and I also met Cheyenne. I didn't meet Cheyenne, but I wanted to meet him there from 𝕮𝖗𝖵 Manifestations, one of our podcast colleagues, also like one of our inspirations, I dare say. He was there as well with his podcast and also representing his band and stuff. And sadly, we didn't meet because we really had like maybe 2 hours before getting ready for the show. Before changeover, and after the show we went back to the hotel around 8:30 or so, because the flight back on the next day was at 7 in the morning, so we had to get up at 5. So yeah, no partying, just being old boring metal people, I guess, which sounds
not quite the sex, drugs and rock and roll that everyone expects.
Sounds really lazy and really lame. Sorry for destroying your illusions about what being a musician nowadays can look like.
No, I can only imagine, like, of all the things that go into it, and assuming everything goes as planned, that's still exhausting, but being able to roll with things not going to plan and still delivering that show, that must only come with experience.
Yeah, fuck, man. I mean, we had an experience at the very intro of this show. Some of you who might been there might have noticed it when the our click track, which goes on all the in-ear monitors of all the musicians, actually went out the wrong way, the wrong channel, and it came out of the PA just before the intro played.
I bet that sounded awful to the crowd as well.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not a nice sound.
Absolute
really.
Fucking nightmare for me, because the whole atmosphere, like the whole momentum when you go on stage with all the costumes and like that very epic moment, it's just completely trashed down. And it's always been a bit of a nightmare, stuff like that happening. And it never really happened so far in 15 years, which is quite lucky, I guess. But there's always a first time for everything, I guess. So... Yeah, and it only happened because we implemented this system. This was the first show where we played with like a new click system, because beforehand only the drummer had the click, and we always played on the drums basically. But now we do all of us have the click in their ears, apart from their own monitor mixes, of course, which makes things a lot easier. If you can't hear, if the sound is shitty on stage, which can always be the case, of course. But yeah, we didn't double check the channels, and yeah, shit happens, I guess. But we could save it because we had some backup tracks, and we only lost like 2 minutes, and we're still ended the show in time as well. Oh, but fuck yeah, that was a shitty moment.
It's lessons learned, isn't it? I think we're both aware as soon as you start something new, things pop up and go wrong.
Yeah,
like this podcast is a perfect example.
Yeah, we've had so many stupid fucking amateurish, stupid technical issues so far. It's been laughable, really, but also it's kind of funny because I guess it's humbling in some way. Even though I'm a recording artist for the past 15 years, I still have trouble with figuring certain stuff out when it comes to recording my own voice. And so, yeah, I mean, we're all just humans.
Exactly, that's it. I see it as being very related to our general subject, as in working on something, ironing it out, making mistakes, improving on them, and getting to where you need to be. It's funny.
Yeah, and allowing yourself to make mistakes and allowing yourself to be human, even though whatever you work in, whatever you're working with, especially when it comes to being an artist and presenting yourself in a certain persona or in a certain character or in a certain vibe. At the end of the day, as I mentioned before, no one is anything more than just human. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I'm just kind of thinking along the lines of like the audience at Inferno. I'm sure they are more than able to look past little things like that and still enjoy the full show. No doubt.
Yeah.
They know what you do.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing is, as a musician, you always think like the smallest thing on stage that happens, even just playing wrong notes or something like that, or maybe forgetting a lyric part, some things like that, is like the absolute worst that can happen, and it destroys the whole show. But you know, the reality of these things is usually that no one gives a shit. No one even notices. Like maybe 10% of the audience actually notices stuff like that. And even they usually don't give much of a shit, because they all know we're all humans, and being a live band is tough, and stuff can happen very easily. You rely on a lot of brain power and muscle memory and stuff, and it really takes a very, very little spark to light a fire of shit's going wrong. And yeah, that's just the reality of it, and people know that, and people are very forgiving for this kind of thing. I think that's what I've noticed.
For sure. I think if anyone in the crowd ever saw something like that and it really offended them, I always assume they've never done anything remotely performative, and kind of realize exactly what you've just laid out, that it's a very human thing. And when there's so many moving parts to that whole performance, not just yourselves as a band, everyone else doing the sound, the lights, the road, everyone. It's insane. They all rely on everyone else.
Exactly. All the elements that have to come together to be for the experience to become actually a good show, what people would conceive as a good show. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of things that have to align perfectly, or at least very well. And at the end of the day, that's what makes it human as well. That's what makes it a human experience. If we would all be just perfectly executing our roles as a band member, or even apart from the band, just like the technicians and like the light guy or the sound guy or whatever, if that all would always work 100% perfectly, then the human factor would be lost. And there's the whole AI discussion brewing again.
Well, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and it almost kind of takes away from those moments where everything does come together and everybody feels it.
Yeah, that's what makes it so magical usually.
Exactly, yeah. So you kind of, if everything was as clean cut as that, you'd take away that experience.
Yeah.
But I definitely admire you and the guys for going all that way, given the time that you had, and like you say, you were back at the hotel early. All that just for the show alone. I really admire that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, it must be easy for a lot of bands to see those details and decide not to, which, that's on them as a band. But for you to go through that, to deliver that show, I always admire. And like when we've met before, I'm not sure if it was the first time or the second time where...
It was the worst time. Like, we had the worst time.
You were all ill, right?
Not just that. I think... I'm not sure. At the Rebellion, right, in Manchester?
Yeah, it was both times.
Were you there both times?
Yeah.
The first time was actually like the worst part of a tour we've ever had, due to some replacement guy who couldn't really play the parts. And that was like absolute hell. Absolute nightmare, and that was the last evening with him, and then luckily some emergency friend showed up, but that wasn't a great experience. And the second time we were there, actually, very same location, we all had, the whole tour bus had food poisoning in London the very day before, and it was the deepest winter, and the venue didn't have any heating really, and it was cold as fuck in there, and we spent the whole day, after a night of puking and vomiting on the streets of London, no joke, we spent the day in that venue where, like, there was one shower which was ice cold,
fuck.
And it was like maybe 5 degrees in the venue for the whole day, and we asked the guy to turn up the heating, and he was like, I'm just gonna close the front door, then it's gonna be warm. So yeah.
Yeah, not in England, not at the end, because it was end of the year, I'm sure, because a lot of bands tour in Manchester.
It was January.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. So still cold, like UK cold.
Fucking ice cold,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, so shutting the door's going to do fuck all.
But we all managed to still play a decent show, I think.
Oh,
So
yeah, you guys delivered. Like, because I remember, like, so whenever I meet up with bands, at that time we were clients. We were kind of,
Yeah.
that was basically the start of our friendship.
yeah,
So you were kind enough to get me in on the guest list.
Yeah,
And I
right.
always kind of make a note of, I never ask when you're ready to meet up until after the show. Obviously, you guys have the build up to it. You get in the zone, do what you need,
Yeah.
do the show. And then that second time, I messaged saying, like, whenever you're ready, give me a shout or whatever it was. And as soon as you said you were all ill, I was like, right, I'm going to head home. I'm not going to force you out to, come say hello
we didn't
or
even
anything
meet.
like that.
Okay.
No, we only met on the very first time.
Yeah, but also
but
it was super brief as well, because like after 2 minutes of talking,
Yes.
you were like, "Oh, I don't want to take more of your time or so," and I thought like, "What? We only just met.
yeah.
Come stay for a beer or so."
I know. No, I know. It was. So I'm always like overly aware of bugging people or anything like that, because it was our first time. It was just like, just want to say hello, like obviously meet face to face. That was cool.
Yeah.
And then I've got like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive home.
Okay, I see.
So there's that as well. But no, next time I'll make sure it's a bit longer.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Or I'll just come visit at some point.
Yeah, all that. Yeah, we'll go visit some English
Yeah,
pubs.
right.
Definitely.
We were talking about. I was always talking about English pubs being like one of the best things about the UK. Even though, to be honest, there is not super much I like within the UK. Like when it comes to like the lifestyle there, because I've been in London for quite a while, and yeah, it's always been way too chaotic, too loud, too dirty for me, too many people. But the pubs were always the highlight. So yeah, that's...
Yeah. The thing is with the UK, given how small it is, you can go from like super busy, intense, like social environments to being in the middle of nowhere within like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, true. I mean, we did that photo shoot last year for the Schammasch record at the Jurassic Coast, which is around near Dorset, which was fucking beautiful. Like the landscape there and like the countryside, the little villages with like the stone buildings. That was really something.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I'm not going to do justice to the UK if I say like there's nothing to appreciate there. Absolutely not. But yeah, like when it comes to the big cities, I'm always a bit reserved, because I'm not a city guy. So
No, yeah, I avoid the cities as well, and I live here.
yeah, you're a fucking hermit as well.
I'll do my best.
Probably that's why we get along so well.
Yeah, probably. But I always like kind of feel for touring musicians. You must get like such a snapshot of the area.
Yeah.
And for the UK especially, I always hope that you kind of at least consider that there's more to it than just the places you see.
Yeah,
Because like you say, when you see like the busy cities, they're not always pleasant, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, there's plenty of idiots around. So I hope that never kind of puts anyone off from visiting and actually taking time, like you say with the photo shoot, to take time to visit certain places that...
Yeah, I mean, there's
kind of appealing.
magical places in the UK, absolutely. I mean, that's why we went there in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
shall we
20 minutes in and not even touching on the main subject. We're doing really well with organizing our podcast.
No, I think if we organize it too much,
then
get a little bored.
the human aspect is gonna be gone.
Yeah.
All right, so shall we talk a bit about our beginnings? I mean, beginnings. Sorry for interrupting. I guess the beginnings. We talked a bit about that in the very first episode, as you people might remember. So maybe let's talk a bit more closely about like actually starting out as a freelancer, like taking in the first jobs and building up customer base and communication stuff like that. Maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think we spoke about kind of how we started kind of regularly making work and sharing work, but when it comes to deciding to go freelance full time, there's a lot of details that maybe some people wouldn't consider or maybe not quite realize the weight of. I mean, I certainly didn't when I first started, because there's no real other way I can say it. You basically open the floodgates to a lot of possibly stressful, incredibly boring elements to it that are basically all the. Yeah, I mean, I'm coming in.
It's fucking
quite
horrible.
Yeah, it definitely.
You let the worst people like out there in your life, and
when it comes to all, obviously, income tax and earnings, and that's basically what I'm talking about. There's a lot of things that I've always felt that are designed to not catch you out or trip you up, because that sounds a little too dark. But if you're not super on it, you can get caught up and it can be quite stressful. And obviously, any kind of stress like that's instantly going to take away any type of creative energy you've got. So when I first realised I was going to be doing it full time, luckily me and Kim had a friend who's an amazing accountant that she took care of all things like that, and she's managed to roll with all my stupid questions and mistakes over the years. And maybe a lot of people will possibly kind of dismiss the thought of that. Obviously, you pay the accountant, so obviously that's, your first earnings, that's where it's going to be going. But in the long term, it will make life so much easier unless you're naturally gifted with taxes, numbers, paperwork, which I admire if that's the case. But I think it's safe to say that some of us certainly aren't. It can take a lot of the mental pressure, I think, away. No, I'm not saying they do all the work. You've certainly still got things to do. But it'll definitely allow some more brain space to kind of let you go all in on your creative endeavors, and make sure everything's laid out as it should be, really, and not get caught up with anything. I don't know if you've done a similar kind of path, or if you take care of it yourself, but obviously it'll look different for everyone. But
yeah, of course it's always different for the specific countries as well. In Switzerland, it's a bit specialty because we do our taxes on our own when we are self-employed, and by doing them alone, I mean we basically can put together whatever we want. In the end, there's no right or wrong way how to do it. I guess that sounds a bit wrong, but there is a lot of freedom of how you can actually do it as a self-employed person. And I'm lucky enough to have an accountant in my band. So he started doing things early on for me and gave me advice of how to do stuff and how to make it my advantage that we have this system in Switzerland, and how to be clever about it, of course, because there's a lot you can do wrong. And if you don't really pay attention to it, then they might just come up with some random numbers that they would think you make as an artist, as a musician maybe. You get 20,000 for one show or something, which is obviously beyond anything reasonable for someone like me. So you got to be careful about doing it the right way. And he helped me a lot with that, and took some of the headaches away. That was never really a big deal for me. And I do a lot myself still, and just basically collecting all the numbers and give it over to him, and he does the magic. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, I mean, we, in terms of declaring stuff, we have it's very rigid in the way that the UK does it. And if you make any kind of mistake, they're on you, and they won't hesitate in, like you say, making up estimates and numbers and just forcing it, and it's not worth the hassle, in my opinion. And if anyone can kind of make the system work for them, fair enough. But I heard too many horror stories of people trying to do it themselves, and then you think you've done it, signed it off, declared it, and then something comes up to haunt you again. And for me personally, I didn't want any space for that. And I think that kind of thinking is probably why I lay all my emails out so detailed and as clear as I can, because I wouldn't want the client or myself to kind of get tripped up on anything if possible, down the line that we've not addressed. So I think that kind of translates from there, really. But I just wanted to get like the boring tax stuff out of the way first, so we can kind of get into some of the more, dare I say, like fun parts of it and the way that we lay it out for each of us that works for us.
I guess though the first thing to keep in mind, like, how was it for you when you started as a freelancer taking in jobs? Because obviously you probably weren't charging a lot, and like the whole story, how did that build up? How much time did you have to spend doing jobs for you to realize that this is gonna become my full-time job now?
Yeah, it was a slow build up, because I'd say back then it was like 80% personal work, 20% client work. And I know some artists kind of always assume that you have to approach bands and send your portfolio to bands.
Oh fuck! I never did that. Like maybe once or twice with
I never.
Very specific cases. But no, that's
I always wondered if I should back then, and it never felt natural for me to do it.
Yeah, I totally.
So maybe I could have got a few more a little quicker, but I think like I said in one of the other episodes, that was probably the most natural kind of build up into it for me in terms of building confidence and skill. So I'd just keep putting my own work out and then work on a commission as it came in.
Yeah.
And then not stress too much when my next one would be. The only thing I kind of really made a point of is always be working on something, whether that's for me, for a client, whether it's a large elaborate piece, whether it's a smaller practice piece. And I still have that in play now. Like if I have the time to work, I'm working on something, anything. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of the organic word of mouth from working on the one commission. And then even if it's not from that band to another band, maybe it's me posting that I've worked on this cover for this band.
Yeah.
That gets people who are following my work, that lets them know that I'm working on commissions. So then they know it's an option. And obviously there'll be the odd time where I might advertise that I'm open for commissions or things like that. And I always kind of, whenever I've been asked about it before, I kind of advise that like anything you put out is potential. I always say bait. I never know if it's the right word, but it is bait.
Yeah,
you're kind of fishing for clients. It sounds a little crude, but
yeah, I know what you mean. Just putting it out
so
there.
Even yeah, exactly. If you're not out there advertising what you are willing to take on, a lot of bands and clients might not message to say, "Are you working on commissions at the moment?" They might be waiting for you to say you're available. So yeah, don't be for anyone listening who might be starting. Don't be scared to kind of advertise what you want to work on, even if you don't directly approach bands. Which I don't know if that's the thing to do anymore, but I feel like if that's something natural for you, go for it and roll with it from there. But whatever approach feels best for you probably is the best for you, and you'll roll with whatever comes in and kind of figure it out from there. But did you, when you started out, did you do kind of regular posts about taking on commission work, or
well, to be honest,
did you send out emails or anything?
No, not at all. I kind of slipped into becoming a freelancer. Like I wasn't really going for it all the way back then. It was more like of a weirdly natural development, because as I mentioned in the first episode, like a friend of mine started to ask me about like doing designs for him here and there, because he knew what I was doing, like just personal stuff. I was actually doing a lot of skull carving back then. That was like pretty much the thing that got me into becoming like kind of a fine artist, apart from being a musician, I guess. Apart from doing graphic stuff as well for the band and like, as I said, for people here and there, more and more. But also been messing a bit with like personal t-shirt designs and stuff. But it was always just on a very crude level. And the skull carving thing was something that was kind of, I guess, the first real thing that made me feel like I'm actually an artist, in terms of, apart from being a musician, I'm actually a visual artist doing stuff with my hands now. And that kind of gave me a bit of confidence, I guess, more confidence to actually pursue things into a more fine artist way of doing things, and just doing art for the sake of art, and maybe being able to sell a couple of pieces here and there. And the skull carving stuff was actually quite successful for a while, but it was just too much effort, and for various reasons I had to quit it, like maybe 2 years ago. That was kind of the thing that got me rolling with freelance stuff more and more, because it gave me that confidence to actually see myself as an artist. And I think it's always these things have to come naturally. I think you can't force it. You can't force your work or like your availability onto bands. I know this thing about like approaching random bands with your art. It is a thing nowadays, and maybe for some people it works great, and that's fine. But for me, every time I get like random requests on the band pages about random artwork that doesn't have anything in common with what we're trying to project on the outside, anything with our art, like there was no effort whatsoever about trying to analyze what this band is about, and if my art is a good fit for them, or that I could maybe offer them something that they would be interested in. It was just like, hey, here's my art, if you ever want to do something. And it was like, a lot of the time it's just like random gore illustrations and shit, like anti-Christian iconography of blasphemy stuff, which really isn't a fit for us at all. And it's just lazy. Like, you're just going on people's nerves, and there's nothing gonna come out of situations like that. If you do,
there's a definite etiquette to it.
Yeah, exactly. If you do approach, if you take that approach of going to bands and showing them your stuff uninvited, then please at least do some effort, do some research, and check out if it's a good fit and if it makes sense. Because otherwise you're really just wasting people's times, and it's kind of beneath you. It should be, at least.
Well, it can have the opposite effect as well.
Yeah, exactly. You're just, right. You're just going on people's nerves. And I've blocked so many people, so many artist profiles, because they just kept sending stuff. And, that's not the way to go, I think. As I said, I think stuff should progress naturally. And just do work for yourself. Become good at what you do. Be patient, put it out there in the best way you can. Try to build up a visual identity as an artist, maybe one that is unique to the masses out there in some way, one or another. Or even if not so unique, that's still fine, as long as it's quality work, I think. And as long as you do that, things have to happen at some point. Like, it's almost... a natural law that if you put good work out there, things will happen in some way at some point. And growing an artist reputation today with the possibilities and also the the competition, which is endless, is very tough. So you have to be patient. That's basically one of the big parameters that you have to be mindful of.
Yeah, well said. I agree. Yeah, and that actually leads me into a point I was going to bring up in like a technique that I've used over the years. That's, I won't call it a secret technique 'cause it's not, but maybe some of the artists who are working with bands maybe kind of do something similar. So I'll start this by saying I generally dislike the word of projection, as in like sending things out, things happen. It doesn't always work like that. But if there are certain bands I would love to work with, instead of approaching them or kind of leaving comments or anything like that, I'd listen to their work and I would aim to create a piece, almost imagining that they've commissioned it. And bearing in mind, I'll have had no contact with whatever band it is, but I let their music influence my work and I kind of treat it as a project. And I'm not saying I do that for every piece, but over the years, it's happened like maybe 4 times where I've kind of had that in mind and somehow my work has aligned and got in front of them somehow, or some other pieces that have kind of been part of a few pieces they've seen. And somehow, a few months after, I've had an email from them. And I joke with Kim that sometimes I get like a follow or a like from a band and I'll say, I'm going to work with them in 6 months. And I realise how arrogant that sounds.
No, I mean, I get it.
But it works. And I'm not saying it's going to work every time. It certainly doesn't work every time for me. And I don't want this being taken as I create work I don't want to do just to work with them bands. It's certainly not that.
Of course.
But I let so music's always been a huge influence for me in terms of getting the atmosphere I want from my work. And sometimes those things cross over, and I guess my main point with that is kind of create towards what you want to take on.
Yes, I would absolutely word it the same way, really.
And it could be different projects with different people, a different style, anything. It's quite a broad thought, but if you are wanting to take on regular commission work, you have to be comfortable with what they're going to be seeing and asking for.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I've said it before on here. I know I've said it before on a few other podcasts, but if you go down the path of creating what you feel like clients want and it's not what you want to make in your heart, you're going to really struggle. You might get away with a few projects, but you're going to find it more tedious than you need to, because it kind of goes against your natural flow of being creative, because you're meeting demands that don't align fully with yours. So if you can put out the work that's 100% you, the projects you end up working on ideally will be closer to that 100% you than if you went in the other path.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And I don't want to rant too much. I want to kind of keep it as simple as I can. But that's something I learned along the way, and I still do that now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with everything you said. Like, it's been the same experience for me. And even though I have to be a bit more mindful of what I'm turning down and what I'm taking in, because I still, as said before, not nearly as established as you are as a visual artist, So sometimes I take on stuff that I don't particularly enjoy that much doing, but at some point you got to pay some bills as well.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely still within that. Yeah, don't get me wrong.
But absolutely agree what Adrian's been saying. Like, if you put out the work that you want to put out, that you want to do, then that's the way to go, and that's the route for having great commissions coming up, because that's what people will see, and that's basically paving the road for great collaborations, I'd say.
And it's your responsibility to find your style as well. Don't just wait for it to come to you. You have to recognize all the elements that go into you making your work and nurture them and encourage them, and don't ignore them. And you'll get to where you need to be quicker. Whether it's outside influences, like I say, music is a big one for me. I've boiled down my music tastes so finely so that I have different genres for different stages of my work. And again, I'll repeat it again, that can look different for everyone. But if you encourage your influences and you notice that being translated in your work, you keep going. Those will change over years. You have to keep adapting. But the way you nurture your inspiration, your muse, whatever you want to call it, will only work in your favour. But that's on you. No one else can do that. That has to be part of your process, to keep recognising when something needs to change, when something needs to stay the same, or anything. That won't just pop up out of nowhere. You have to really encourage that.
Yeah, you're getting very poetical here. I like it.
I'm getting on my high horse a little bit.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, I like it a lot how you described the whole thing. And again, I completely agree. One point I would also mention towards that discussion is when starting out and trying to build up an identity as an artist. I think that's something that a lot of artists struggle with when they are starting out, and even after a while still. I mean, I'm struggling with that all the time, basically, when it comes to imposter syndrome. And I'm going to make it simple. Learn the difference between inspiration and duplicating. Because if you're inspired by an artist or something, and you let that flow into your work, that's a way to go. And if you're just duplicating it for the sake of wanting to do something that looks familiar or similar, like the stuff that you actually like, then it's not going to go down a great path, I think. I mean, starting out, obviously, like everyone is kind of starting out copying other people's works, and that's absolutely legitimate for a moment, for that starting point. But at some point, you're either gonna make the connection between finding your own style and developing it out of those inspirations that drove you to do this kind of work, or you're getting stuck with just copying things over and over. And I mean, for some people it works, I guess. Can also build up a career on copying other people's works. And I say that without spite, at least maybe with a little bit of spite. But
you're going to limit your clients doing that. Yeah,
and it might not be the most satisfying career or satisfying way of being an artist if it's just copying other people's works.
I think it depends on why they got into it. If they got into it for money, then that'll probably work for them. But like I say, they're going to limit the clients. And some bands and clients won't really mind that it looks like other people's work. And that's fine if they want to pay for that, fair enough. But if you kind of get into it because it's something you have to do every day and you just happen to go to the next level of trying to earn a living from it, then copying will... It'll halt your progress generally, other than kind of studies to kind of refine technique and things like that. That's a different conversation.
That's inspiration to me, really.
Yeah, I've always kind of seen inspiration as I see a piece that makes me want to draw. I don't necessarily want to draw that
Yeah,
piece that I've
exactly,
seen.
exactly. Like
It
that
just
that
pulls me
rush
to the
that comes
desk.
over you, saying like, "Fuck." I'm in the spirit of wanting to create something now, and I get that a lot of times when I listen to music that I like, because I listen very rarely to actual music nowadays, apart from just a lot of ambient and soundtracks for various reasons. But if I do listen to some album that I've grown up with, or like that means a lot to me, and I get back into that moment, I feel like all the time, every time that happens, I feel this rush of, fuck, I want to make music right now. And that's exactly what you've been talking about, I guess. That moment of inspiration that hits you if you see a great piece of art.
Well, to be honest, music does that for me more than seeing other visual art. I'm not saying it's just music, but definitely both, but I get more from that. I think it's the atmosphere. But I've always seen it as like it's a transference of energy. And if you receive that energy, it makes sense to use it in the best possible way, rather than just kind of feel it and then let it disperse. It's like if you can transfer it into something of your own, then as you complete that and show that to other people, you're passing on that energy and someone else will see that and get the same feeling. And like I said before about adding to the creative pot generally.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my reason why. So there was another part of a question we got that I want to bring up that I found really interesting. And I feel like we've possibly touched on this already, maybe even in our private chats. But so the line was how we deal with the job status of being a full-time artist. And that's psychologically and kind of organisation-wise, which I feel like organisation-wise we've covered a little bit on. Maybe there's some more to that. But the psychological element of like telling people you're a full-time artist, especially like people, I say out in the real world, everyday normal people you interact with away from work, I always find it interesting how they perceive an adult being a full-time artist. And some of the comments I've got over the years, like me and Kim laugh about them, and it's no one's fault. I'd certainly never take it personally, and like family members as well. And I just wondered how, or if you've had any kind of funny instances of having to explain what you do for a living and any kind of like feedback on that.
Are you joking? Being an artist in Switzerland. Switzerland is probably the least artistically open country that you can imagine when it comes to it being a job title. Because people here don't think that a job as being an artist actually exists. And I guess it's been getting a bit better over the past decade maybe or so, but still, like, yeah, people actually, a lot of the times I feel if you say like I never say I'm an artist because, yeah, you just get a weird look basically, or like a stupid comment. I usually say I'm like a designer and a full-time musician, which works a bit better. But to be honest, I don't really care anymore what they think. Really,
that's fair.
I don't. Yeah. I mean, I've had so many instances where people were giving me strange looks, and even it took my family like a fucking decade to actually accept that this is my life and this is my passion, my purpose, my way of making money, even my way of paying my bills. It took my parents about 10 years to come to a Schammasch show, I think. So yeah. Switzerland, when it comes to that, it's really something else. I think other countries might be a lot more progressive when it comes to people wanting to become artists professionally, being a bit more open, a bit more supportive maybe. On the other hand, there's this weird thing in Switzerland that they have a lot of cultural funding programs, which is like the complete opposite of how people perceive this kind of thing here. But there's also a lot of money around in Switzerland, so at least some of it is dispersed in a good way, I guess.
Yeah, it's always nice when you see pockets of like towns or cities kind of at least try, encourage,
because they have so much money here that they really don't know where to spend it, and then 0.001% goes into art funding. No, of course, I'm joking. There's a lot of art funding in Switzerland, and we have great museums here as well. But yeah, when it comes to actually telling people that you want to be an artist or you are an artist, then there is suddenly like all the openness towards art dies within a second. Usually, it's kind of weird.
That's a shame. Yeah. So I'm really interested in what your parents' reaction was when they first saw a Schammasch show.
I was quite drunk when I played that show. I think they kind of liked it, I guess. Sadly, I didn't meet them afterwards because we got lost somehow. But I guess they finally. The funny thing was they started. They never really took it serious what I've been doing as a musician until I was around 10 years in or so. Until that moment came, or no, maybe it was 7 years or something, around Triangle. When that moment came when we got into like local newspapers, which nobody gives a shit about, like really. It doesn't matter at all, especially not in our world, of course. And and when we got like nominated for like the pop prize of our city and shit like that, then they finally opened their eyes and probably realized, okay, wow, this is actually, this is something serious here. And I guess it took them that to realize that, which is a bit sad, but different generations, I guess.
I was going to bring up the generation thing. Yeah, I see that a lot.
And Switzerland again.
Yeah, well, when you were joking about how much gets spent on the art, I was about to agree with you because that's what the UK is like, and then you were joking, but unfortunately it is exactly like that in the UK.
Really? But you have so much cultural background, especially when it comes to music. It's insane. It's a birthplace of so many things.
Music, yeah. So music in certain areas definitely gets encouraged. It almost kind of, don't get me wrong, I'm not at the pulse of alternative music generally, but it seems to kind of come and go. Like certain venues stick around and then suddenly they just go. And then in terms of like funding and stuff, it always feels a little bit backhanded. Like we are like the last on the list of things to invest in, and if they've got anything left at the end, they'll just chuck it somewhere small. And it's like,
because art is just a luxury, isn't it? That is.
Oh yeah.
That is such a wrong statement in so many ways, and I fucking hate that this is the general consensus nowadays. Apparently, it's so sad.
It is, because when you see what they're spending the money on, in terms of like just structural nothings, and like so many empty shops and things like this, it is sad. But I want to kind of pull back to like the psychology of when people ask what you do for a job and this type of thing. And when I first realized I was doing it full time and like it was my job, I'd get people asking, and I'm like yourself, I'd never said I'm an artist, because from where I'm from, that sounds so up your own ass. Even though like I'm a full-time artist, but it sounds so up your own ass that you're instantly going to get dismissed. So I ruled that out. So I tend to go to full-time illustrator, pen illustrator, or whatever. That sounds a little bit more kind of nuanced, and people tend to kind of go, oh, okay, fair enough.
So you do like architectural design and shit like that.
Oh, well, I've had all sorts of like reactions. One guy basically went, all right, like Banksy. Not quite. But yeah, for the sake of the conversation, yeah, why not? Yeah. It's not going any further.
It's almost the same. I can see the similarities in so many ways.
Yeah, why not? And then, like, you see some of like the older folks, because I live in like a little village and everyone kind of either knows everyone or has seen everyone. And then when you end up chatting, they ask, and I say, I'm a full-time illustrator. And a lot of them will be like, so you do that for money? Like, what do you do? I'm like, yep, that's what I do full-time. And, you know, I've been doing it
Drawing
10
little
years.
cartoons.
Drawing skulls, yeah. And it is funny, like, but then you get, honestly, the best thing about it is, so where I live on the edge of a place called 𝔬𝐴𝐵, which is such a beautiful little town. And when I say little, it is really little. And it's got tons of history. And it's all, I always see it as it's like a mini York it kind of encourages its own character, which I don't think enough places do. And there's a handful of like small alternative shops and things. So you get a lot of people visiting that are open to things like this. And then whenever I've been chatting with them, they kind of, once I've explained what I do, they open up and they start asking questions. And then I find out that they're either a painter or an author or something like that. Yeah, and it's great when it happens, and it kind of opens up this new level of conversation, because I mean, I'm sure a lot of listeners won't have seen me, but I'm kind of average height with tattoos, piercings, usually wearing black, kind of the typical band shirts or whatever. So a lot of the older generation have already got their own interpretation of what I'm like before they speak to me, which is fair enough. So I like to kind of make an effort of getting past that. So then, when it happens that we actually have something creative to talk about, you see all their kind of guards just drop, and it's a great thing. So I've never kind of been bothered about telling people what I do or going into it, but I've just kind of learnt to read how detailed I should go into it, you know, and then when to change the subject or whatever. But it's quite an interesting question, really, that I just wanted to dip into a little bit.
You know, it's funny when you say like you met like different people doing stuff as artists as well, where you wouldn't have expected them to. It reminded me of an example when that happened to myself last year when the Schammasch album came out, the last one, and I got a pre-order from literally the next little village from my village,
Nice,
which is just over the hill, like 2 minutes bus ride from here. And I saw the address and I was like, fuck, huh? Really? There's someone in this area actually lives here and actually is interested in our music. So I Googled the name just because I thought like, I don't know, maybe I had a hunch or something. And turned out it was like this artist, female artist from like the quite well known in Switzerland, actually did a lot of stuff in the late 90s, I think, or so. And she just opened up her latest exhibition. And there's like advertising all over Basel now of her latest exhibition, and it's kind of strange because she's from a completely different generation, and B, I would have never guessed that a person like that could be interested in our music. So I was thinking about maybe contacting her or not, and I still didn't, but I still might, because I think like there could be actually a lot of potential for very interesting dialogues as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool when that happens. She's obviously on the lookout for different artworks and things like that. She's very involved. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, really. I was super surprised, and I thought maybe she's gonna actually contact me if she's gonna see where, like, the address where the parcel actually came from, because it's literally the town next to hers. So didn't happen yet, but who knows? Maybe we'll make contact someday in some way.
It is like the links that you make through this type of work, I never realize in the moment, and then a couple of years later I'll look back and I'll be like, I'd have never been, I'd have never crossed paths with them if this hadn't have happened.
Yeah,
It's all through work,
and
it's the beauty of it.
I think it's just like there is a lot of this sounds pretentious, I know, but this kind of universal language of art where you instantly can make a connection. Of course, it doesn't always happen like that, but it can happen, and if it happens, it's quite a beautiful thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's determined by how open the individual is in terms of taking in other art. I think creative people can sometimes get lost in their own bubble and kind of don't always want to make connections. Yeah, which is a shame, really, because like we've just been saying, you're going to miss out on a lot.
Yeah.
I had a couple of years where I had the opportunity to do some in-person exhibitions with other artists, and some of them I already knew from online. Some I met for the first time, and I'm still in contact with a few of them. And in the moment, I knew it was like a pretty cool situation, and I just kind of went with it. But then years later, I've kind of looked back and I've realised how valuable that was. Yeah, it's obviously nice to interact online regularly with people, but to go and see people's work in person, see them in person, and have real organic conversations, I don't think there's anything purer than that in terms of kind of connections other than the art itself.
Oh, fuck, that brings up so much memories from tour bus nights. Seriously, like, there's been a lot of that on various tours that I've been playing, and oh fuck yeah, some of these moments were fucking gold. A lot of them were fucking horrible as well, but
well, when you're spending time under each other's feet so much like that, you must end up getting into some pretty deep conversation.
Yeah, I mean, especially like on this very close and narrow and tight space that you share for like from 0 to 100%. From one day to the next for like 1 month or like half a month or so, and you go through so much together, and yeah, like you often end up sitting there like in the lounge at 3 a.m. while everyone else went to bed, and it's just like there is this one person sitting there with you, and you have like the fucking weirdest, strangest, most fulfilling conversations you can imagine. I kind of missed out.
Well, it's quite a unique environment to be like that, isn't it? So
it's fucking bizarre. Like at some point, maybe we can talk a bit about those kind of things a bit more in depth as well. I guess people would be interested in that too. But definitely in another one. Actually, there was one thing I wanted to mention as well, because we had that other question about training, which I think would be an interesting one, maybe as a final point to make here in this episode.
Yes.
When it comes to training, because how is that for you? Do you have any artistic training whatsoever in any kind of way? I'm curious.
I am black belt in pencil sharpening. No. Unfortunately not. And this is
interesting that you say unfortunately. Now I'm even more curious. You got to explain that now.
I think a lot of people maybe assume that everyone doing it full time has done an extensive university course and got qualifications and all of this type of stuff. And I know for a fact some illustrators and painters that I follow and I'm in contact with have had that, and it's amazing. Like, their work is obviously amazing, but I know they've not relied on that. They've put everything we spoke of in this episode, putting the work in. They've matched that. Yeah. And to be honest, I won't say who it was, but one person basically said they did the training, they got the degree, whatever it was, And at the end, they said, I learned nothing. Everything I've learned has been from my own hands. And again,
that would be an interesting conversation. Like maybe
it would. I might reach out.
Yeah, actually, that would be something I would definitely like to dive in, because I honestly can't believe that this is true. But yeah, I mean, we might be able to explore that someday. Who knows? I don't know who it is, but maybe you can tell me later.
Yeah, I won't say anything on the podcast just yet. Like I say, I'll reach out.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there. But it's a shame that they went through that. And I'm not saying getting training and qualifications won't work for everyone. Obviously, it will for some. But it will get you to a certain point, and then you have to kind of, again, match that work. So my short answer is no. I did one college course that was like a bit of an umbrella course in terms of different mediums and styles and things like that, which went on for a few weeks, and we covered everything from like sunsets in watercolor to
Banksy.
Yeah, I went to the Banksy school of spray.
The Banksy school of illustrators.
Yeah, that's it. It was a bit of like an all-rounder, quick dip in a bit of everything. And the only thing I really felt like I benefited from was like some pencil sketch and shading work that we did. We drew some vases, like still life type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So no, other than that, I never really did any proper training. I used to research stuff online casually. I don't know if that would count, but
I think it does.
Yeah, I guess so. But I used to love zooming in on the illustrators that I follow. I zoom in and kind of see which lines go where. Thicknesses and which I feel like everyone probably does. And then you just kind of go from there, really. But what about you?
I didn't have any musical training apart from trying to play ukulele in fucking first grade or so for half a year and completely failing.
I'd love to hear that in Schammasch.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. Sorry.
Plenty of reverb.
There's been a ton of different instruments in there, but ukulele won't ever go in there.
It's a shame.
But I did have I went to art school for 2.5 years and did some open courses for preparation for that as well for like a year. I guess the main point that I learned from there wasn't really anything technical, because it was like a free kind of school, like not a government funded one. Mm-hmm. So it was very strange. They had very little rules, and I was absent a lot of the time because it was like my worst black metal rebellion phase. Sometimes I was drunk at 11 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, not my greatest phase, but I definitely learned one thing very specifically during that time, which is it doesn't really matter what it is that you do. The parameters, the spectrum is always the same when it comes to art. Like when it comes to creation, there is really no difference if it's music that you want to make, if it's illustrating, if it's painting, if it's writing, if it's dancing, if it's film. Like it doesn't matter at all. And the only thing that matters is that you find the language and learn the language, really. As stupid that might sound, but to me that was kind of a profound thought, to be free of this kind of all these technical questions and all that, all these limitations that people build up when, especially in schools, I think, because it's all about their fucking little world that they've been training in for their whole lives, and they think it's the only thing that matters in art, and they are fucking arrogant about it. I mean, obviously not every art teacher is like that, but I think there are a lot like that. I remember that one guy who taught us, it was a photographer, like a super fucking boring ass older kind of guy, who taught us some InDesign stuff, like basically changing colors of an umbrella in a fucking picture, in a photograph. And it was so fucking boring, and I couldn't believe what we were doing. And then at some point I asked him, like, are we gonna at some point do like more kind of more artistic stuff, more surreal stuff, like more creative ways of manipulating photographs and stuff like that I was really into back then with Photoshop and everything. And his answer was something to the account of, no, that is all just for children wanting to play or something like that. And I couldn't believe the guy. Like, fuck, man, how can you call yourself an artist? Like, what are you doing at an art school? You have nothing. You fail to have the slightest understanding of what art can be. If you limit yourself to this kind of level, to this kind of boundaries. And that was another example that I took with me, really, to constantly telling myself, this is not what art should be. There should be no boundaries. There is no rules of no right or wrong way of how to do things. And the stuff that they teach at schools is just a guideline. It's just a guideline to help you get into whatever you want to do as an artist. It can help you show the tools, and it can help you show the possibilities, how to use certain things, but it can show you how to be an artist, in my opinion. That, as you said before, that you have to learn all by yourself. And that's really like the point I want to make. Art school doesn't make you an artist. It just shows you the tools.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I love that you took what he said and kind of took something productive from that rather than letting it stop you in any way. That's like the best way to take it. Because like the ideal art teacher would be to take, in my opinion at least, to take that point of view of it's a form of play, but encourage it within an adult. And I think I've said something similar before in terms of like how I see my work and keeping the playful fun side of it. You can, like, young people can be so like sensitive to things like that and so creative because
they are maybe a bit more unbiased than we are, than older people are, I guess.
Yeah, and maybe not quite as stubborn or maybe
frustrated, bitter.
yeah.
Or like worn out, even worn out, burned out. Like,
well, it's just a job for them. When it's like that, it's just a job. Yeah. They're just ticking a box, getting paid. Yeah. There's no like love for what they do, which is a real shame.
You're talking about the teachers now, right?
Yes, yeah. The teacher that's obviously got no heart in what they did.
Yeah, or like completely failed, and that's a lot of the times. I guess that's the only thing that's left to do when you fail as an artist is becoming a teacher. might be an insulting thing to say to some people, surely, but sometimes it can be the truth. And that guy showed me back then that it's definitely can be the case, and it's fucking heartbreaking to see things like that moving within the artist world. There is so much wasted potential and so much stupidity in limiting yourself to rules and boundaries. I mean, there can be definitely a good thing as an artist to limit yourself specifically to maybe one style. Like you do it, for example, you limit yourself to one very specific art, like to one very specific way of doing things. very consciously, and that is your artistic identity. But you don't do it because you wouldn't allow yourself to explore anything else if you would feel like it. I mean, I'm putting words in your mouth, but I'm very sure of that, of course.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm very in tune with what I'm pulled to,
exactly.
What I'm instinctively, and I just let that happen. I used to, again, I've said it before, I used to overthink my work so much, and sometimes it got positive results in terms of what I enjoyed that I made, but then the feeling of it generally wasn't great. So I kind of learned to just roll with, like I say, what I'm inspired by, what I'm pulled towards. And I feel like that's kind of the starting point for a lot of people, is kind of learning to roll with that and not overthink it, maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm just trying to think of anything that I can add on to your thoughts, but I feel like you've put it really well, and I agree with all of that. There's something human to it that schools generally, at least from what I've heard, they don't really tune into or encourage. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, my school wasn't the best reference, of course. Like, as I said, it wasn't like the typical kind of government-funded art school program. So I don't know how that happens, like how these kind of schools, like the, what is it called? The SAS or something, like the big kind of art school nowadays to get into whatever kind of 3D design or like making games or becoming record, what's it called? A recording producer and stuff like that. I don't know how these schools operate, and I've heard a lot of positive things because I know quite a few people who went to them, and they all spoke quite positively about it. Maybe it was a different time as well back then for me. But yeah, my experience was, as I said before, there is a certain limit to what an art school can really teach you, and the limit is definitely coming before being an actual artist, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially with visual art. I feel like all the recording stuff is probably seen as more business orientated, and there's more scope for making a living and a career from that side of things rather than the visual art.
I'm not sure. Feel like that side, not sure, but
no, maybe not. It's again, because I'm not kind of involved with that. Maybe I'm super wrong, and hopefully things have changed over the years. But I mean, if it's a path that someone's considering, who are we to say don't do it? Everything
absolutely. Don't take that the wrong way.
Maybe just
like
yeah.
And as I said, like I would have loved to get into a school like SAS back when I was a teen. That wasn't a thing back then, but. If you have those options, absolutely go for it.
Yeah, just don't kind of rely on it as the be all and end all.
Yeah, right. You probably won't come out as a full-grown artist, whatever that means. But
no.
Yeah, it can certainly give you a heads up and a good start into a hopefully long career.
Or completely put you off and make you become a bus driver.
Even if that's the path, then that's the path. It's, as long as it's fulfilling.
Definitely. So on that note then, should we wrap that up?
Yeah, becoming a bus driver.
Yeah, part 2 next week. Learning the horn. Yeah.
Finding the art in being a bus driver. That would also be an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah. So for anyone, again, listening, we thank you again. And like we've shown with this one, we are open to comments and breaking down anything that you might be interested in. So feel free to comment it on either YouTube or any of our social media posts. And we are now on Spotify as well, which I'm so old, I don't even know if they allow comments anymore. But if they do, leave one there as well. We'll keep an eye on it.
I have no idea either. I hate Spotify, but there we are.
Yeah,
still.
we've been kind of...
for the lack of a better option for now.
Yeah, we've been loosely forced onto it.
Yeah, could say that. Nevertheless, support us there or here or wherever you like, wherever you can. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Indeed. Thank you, guys.